I am delighted to introduce our special guest, who I'm gonna have to cheat and do a little bit of reading because he's got a rather lengthy bio. But let me begin with the observation that Assistant Director in Charge Donald Alway is a Civ Angelino. He grew up here. He began his career in the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. He was a deputy for 7 years. He was an explorer, which is the pre-deputy group for younger people. He was a reserve. He worked in custody. So he, this is not some Nepo baby. I mean, this is a guy who did it the old-fashioned and the hard way. Now I'm going to read a little bit. He's the Assistant Director in Charge of the LA Field Office, which is one of the largest, I think the second largest field office in the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I'm guessing after New York, right? Yeah. I'm assuming that it is a major position of unique responsibility within the Bureau. His last position was Assistant Director of the WMD, the Weapons of Mass Destruction Directorate at headquarters in Washington, D.C. And this involves not only the weapons, but the things that are needed to create the weapons. If he were working for the Israelis, he would try and understand, and maybe he has, where Hamas has gotten all of the components it's gotten for the 8,000 missiles it's lobbed into Israel. Many of the components came from Iran. And so this is applied, serious stuff. This is not theoretical work. He joined the FBI as a special agent in '96, and if you don't know, all agents are special agents. So, I don't think they were just regular agents. They're all special. And his first job was actually in the LA Field Office, where he investigated drug trafficking organization. After 9/11, he assisted the crime scenes in New York City and at the Pentagon. So this is actually investigating on the ground what happened on 9/11. He was promoted to Supervisory Special Agent in the Counterterrorism Division at headquarters in '03. He served as the Deputy On-Scene Commander in the Iraq Theater of Operations for the regime's Crimes Task Force in '05. And indeed, people don't always know this, but the Bureau, Federal Bureau of Investigation, played a decisive role in capturing Saddam Hussein. I mean, they were there, Bureau people, when they were pulling him out of the hole, Bureau people were there. So law enforcement techniques have applications which go beyond, the things that we generally associate with them. In 2011, he was Assistant Special Agent in charge of the National Security Branch in the Cincinnati Field Office. In '07, he transferred back to New York, to the field office, to supervise a Joint Terrorism Task Force squad investigating, let's see, make sure I got this right. Again, WMD and destructive threats and trends. And he left this world in 2014, and he was appointed Special Agent in charge of the Jackson Field Office in Mississippi. Think of the geography. Think the different nature of crimes and threats and things that you're dealing with. Cincinnati, Jackson, Mississippi, New York, Iraq, Los Angeles. It's every time you move in the Bureau, particularly at Don's level, you have it's an entire new career. It's an entire new career because every place is special. In LA, you got everything, which is which we'll talk about tonight. After being in Mississippi, he was appointed Deputy Assistant Director of the Training Division in '06. Training is always important because that produces the next generation or two generations of personnel, and became an Assistant Director in 2018. The Training Division is in Quantico. My first visit to Quantico, I remember a long time ago, they showed me with great pride the street which they used to train, what is it called?
Hogan's Alley.
Hogan's Alley, which is they trained agents how to deal with bank robberies. And back in the day, at least when I was young, which is quite a long time ago, the FBI was all about bank robbery. And then it moved into organized crime, and then it moved into terrorism. And this is something we'll talk about because it does all of the above. After leaving training, he then was appointed Assistant Director of the Weapons of Mass Destruction Division, and then finally coming back home to Los Angeles. And it was extremely sagacious of the Bureau to send somebody here who not only grew up here and knows it, but saw it, through the window of black and white. I mean, real tactile, on the ground experience, putting cuffs on people, arresting them, knowing it's not the community, the communities in Los Angeles, because this is a uniquely diverse place. So I want to welcome you home. I want to thank you for doing it. I'm going to ask you a few questions, and then we're going to throw the floor open to questions from our members. I don't really need, as you can tell, a microphone, but I don't think. Everybody hear me? Yeah. Now I am louder now. My first question, which is going to sound, a little simple-minded, but I don't think it is people really don't know much about the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Everybody has, they've seen The Sopranos, so that's one team. They know the Saddam story, that's another team. Within your domain, the huge, what divisions are there? What sections are there? Which I think people would value to learn about.
So I think most folks see the public-facing part of the FBI is our criminal division. And that is all the traditional work that you would see from organized crime, violent crime, fugitive matters, drug investigations, then healthcare fraud, public corruption, corporate fraud, things that you read about, that you see the press releases. You may see the news articles about things that are going on. Still the largest component of FBI resources oftentimes is in our criminal division. However, post 9/11, we reshifted, as folks know, right? We went through a very difficult, arduous reorganization stemming from 9/11, some of the challenges within our own organization. Where as a criminal agent, I didn't interface with our folks working in international terrorism or foreign counterintelligence, the term we use at the time. I didn't have the same accesses, I didn't look at the same information. That has all changed, but it kind of gives you a framework. So today, our number one priority is stopping an act of terrorism from the homeland. So counterterrorism is and always will be the number one priority. Folks won't hear about it. You won't see the news stories because there aren't any. Oftentimes, these disruptions are done through alternative means, state law enforcement actions, etc. The second priority we have is our counterintelligence threat. And that is what we all kind of grew up thinking, spy versus spy. Soviet intelligence officers infiltrating sensitive government facilities and taking camera pictures with tiny film. Those days are really over. But the threat is very real and has become a very much an emerging and prolific threat that touches everything, every element of business, every element of research and design. Anything proprietary, whether it's coming from academia or business, is subject to being gobbled up by a foreign adversary. And not always just the big three that you hear about. Then the cyber threat, which is also an emerging threat that crosses all dimensions for us. The cyber threat is not what you think of hacking and ransomware, which you see like with the LA Unified hack, where a school district was effectively frozen and 560 kids were going to be put out on the street, can't go to school. And what that does to the economy and to the parents, the families, those kids that rely on their food supply oftentimes comes from school supply. So important for us to be involved in that. But the cyber elements cut across everything from how terrorism operates and thrives, how materials are stolen in economic and corporate espionage, etc. And then we move into, there are other elements of weapons of mass destruction, which is kind of broken out, relatively new division, it's only 15 years old. We're looking at counterproliferation and how weapon systems can be built from things we make right here in our country that are used by adversaries to build better weapon systems or things they can't get in their own countries. So we look at that on the national security side. The intelligence apparatus, again, something that we used to collect intelligence pursuant to our investigations. And now we have intelligence as a lead effort on everything we do. All of our criminal and national security investigative matters are led by where the intelligence is telling us to look and support it. So that kind of gives you a framework a little bit about our investigative priorities. Our reach in this office, we are the second largest office behind New York, and I spent 4 years in that office. I can tell you that the people in this office do it better than anybody. They work incredibly hard. They are, I don't want to use the term under-resourced, but we're responsible for the protection of 20 million people across 7 counties. And our territory vastly outranges anywhere else in the FBI. So, covering San Bernardino County alone is the 6th largest, larger than 6 states, and it's the largest county in America with about 2 million people. So you put that anywhere else, and that could be an entire field office, and that's one sub-office out of our Riverside component. So these folks, they're really innovative, they're creative, and I'm extremely proud. So we cover from the Monterey County line, where the San Francisco division takes over, down to the San Diego County line, but then out to both borders. And the law enforcement national security threats don't change based on whether it's an urban or a rural environment. So we've got to have coverage, which means we have to spread our folks very thin. And then when you talk about the programs that identify, that all have task forces, we really do get very, very limited on resources. Comparatively, the New York office has a similar kind of composition, but when they go across the river into New Jersey, they've got another office in Newark. And when they go south, they've got the Philadelphia office and the New Haven office all combined. The folks here are really out on their own. While we have the San Diego office to support us if we needed to, they're 3 hours away and they've got their own environment to maintain and can't really spare anything. So folks here rely on partnerships. So we're heavily tied into all the major law enforcement agencies that you can identify and think of. So we build task forces, I think, better than anywhere. They're well positioned, well staffed, and folks are very creative in how they address problems here. They come up with a lot of technological solutions on their own. They get codified and incorporated into national strategy. So a lot of that is happening right here from Southern California.
One question is, you've served overseas twice. One I neglected to mention is in Iraq, but you were also the legal attaché, which is the FBI representative of the U.S. Embassy in Qatar. How did that, if at all, change your perspective? Because we all belong to the Pacific Council because we believe that, addressing and understanding things global make this a better community and also enriches our lives. How did it change when you came back from these overseas assignments? How did it change you? How did it influence your thinking?
So in hearing you talk about my bio, it sounds like I can't keep a job. But being in theater, working on the regime crime program, I was a logical fit to take the legal attaché job, which was there was no post there before. It was covered by Abu Dhabi, and there was the British Players Theater was a subject of a vehicle bomb. Fortunately, during the bomber missed intermission and only blew himself up in the proprietor who came out to investigate. But because he was late, he didn't get the hundreds of people that theoretically could be killed. So we realized we had a shortfall there in our coverage. I think to answer your question though, living in Qatar for that period of time gave me kind of a sense of what America stands for, right? Not being, there's no such thing as a perfect nation, but what we could provide in value and partnership, and also the limitations on how we were seen by not only our hosts in country, but in the region. And that understanding that dynamic, that to some we were an occupying force, and to others we were kind of a buttress against other aggression, from other countries. So that was a great experience for me, having grown up here in Southern California. And again, I think not to be disparaging of our fellow countrymen, right? But we often look inward on how the world sees us and don't understand both the value that we provide in the world stage, but also how we've not done the best marketing in what America stands for, and that we really believe in free and open society and freedoms, but our mere presence can often counteract that, right? And having a lot of conversations with my counterparts in ministries that we didn't have a lot of relationships. There's always a CIA post, obviously, and there's always a regional security officer from the State Department. They're not building law enforcement relationships like the FBI and legal attachés do. So as I met with my counterparts, I realized even their view of us as a country was different and needed to be mended with a lot of time understanding each other. And so I saw our relationships change based on the time we spent together. And now, I don't like what's going on in the world, right? Where we have so many in the Pacific and Indo-PACOM. We have to work those relationships so people understand who we are and what we're interested in doing in general in protecting their way of life, which isn't ours, but isn't necessarily has to be supported and beneficial.
LA has some unique attributes which I wonder if it provides unique challenges. For example, we have the largest population of migrants from all over the world.
Sure.
Any place in the United States. We're the second city of Iran, Korea, Philippines, Thailand, Guatemala, you name it, we're the second city. And many of these countries, here, you call 911, with some confidence that you're talking about the good guys. In a lot of these countries, law enforcement is quite the opposite. It doesn't serve the people, it exploits people. I mean, the president of El Salvador, Bukele just built the biggest prison in the world, which gives some people some comfort, but others, and he calls himself the coolest dictator in the world, which is probably true. It's a lot cooler than Putin. But how does are there FBI agents there must be who speak, certainly Spanish, but Chinese, Korean, Arabic, Urdu, Armenian, Russian, you name it. These populations are here, and it's culturally challenging to be law enforcement, where people are afraid of you, don't realize that you're there to help, which is generally the case. Yeah. You ran training, so you would certainly know this better than anybody.
Yeah, I mean, with all the conversations around law enforcement and the challenges our partners are having in hiring, we don't share that burden of incorporating in kind of best and brightest from all over society. So we're in a good place. One of the last graduations, we had an amazing amount of we have about 200 graduates in a class, and they spoke 18 different languages, and had a huge percentage had advanced degrees, NASA engineers, medical doctors, school teachers, fighter pilots, right? So you talk about a cross-section of all society. Even my own SAC, Special Agent in Charge team, so I have 5 SACs that run the divisions. One runs counterterrorism, one runs counterintelligence, criminal intelligence and admin. It's a cross-section themselves. My SAC, we use the term for counterintelligence, grew up in Pakistan and moved to this country 17. And decided to join the FBI after 9/11. Ended up in a divorce, started training, and I met her when I was a supervisor, and she was a new agent in New York. And you never meet a more passionate person about protecting the country and the citizens. Our SAC for counterterrorism was born in Iran, and then the intelligence SAC, she was born in. She still lives in Englewood to this day. Was born here and raised here. Was a police explorer like I was. So we've got a really interesting cross section within our own senior ranks. That's mimicked in who the FBI hires. We don't use a quota system. We don't use any kind of defining. In fact, as the AD of training, I would get a call saying, "Hey, how does the class look from a diversity standpoint?" And we really couldn't tell. We didn't track that data. It was not germane to the job. We just knew that we were doing really well based on things like the languages and the backgrounds and the degrees people had. So I think when it comes to Now, we don't have all the answers. We may not have enough, let's say for Los Angeles, Armenian-speaking agents, but we'll have folks, we have a large linguist, an analytical position that focus on language that do speak the languages, and some intelligence analysts, et cetera. So we build teams based on the needs, but there are call to arms at times. We'll say, do we have anybody that speaks this particular dialect? One of my supervisors down in the Long Beach office is she's the only female Khmer speaker in the FBI. And so she gets tapped quite a bit to do, she's the only female, but we have relatively, so if we get a big population in Cambodian organized crime and we need those speakers, it would be tough, but we've got at least someone to draw on for almost anything that we could imagine possible.
The climate, and I know you can't talk about things political, but you're a citizen and you vote, so, duck any part of this that's awkward. But, it's only in recent years that people spoke, the political leaders spoke disrespectfully. It's the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Everybody loves the FBI. Even under Hoover, people like him. This guy was not, a regular guy. I would say that nicely. Now we're living in a world, this is the part you should ignore, in which a senator is holding up the promotion of 300 general officers because he forgot that he's not a football coach and he's a grown-up and a senator and so forth. The Marines are the only military force that met their recruitment numbers this year. The Army, the Navy, and the Air Force couldn't hit their numbers for recruitment. So, the head of the FBI happened to be fired when he was in California and expected to fly back under his own steam. I mean, it was just incredibly unprofessional, disrespectful. How's morale? Are people joining the FBI? I mean, even sending you to LA, the FBI, again, you probably shouldn't address this. The FBI sent, the former sheriff of Los Angeles County to prison. He deserved it. I'm not, but the FBI, it may have an unsettled relationship with, the agency that you were. What's it like? Is it, how different is it from when you joined up? And what are the unique challenges and how are you addressing them? And duck all the political commentary because you have to. But,
well, I think you have a couple things interlaced in there, but one was on recruitment. We are near capacity. So we're in the high 90s, and our attrition rate's under 2% for agents. It has gone up. There have been more resignations now, and we're studying that. I have the heads of HR, resource planning, and facilities finance here this week. I'm working, understanding LA a bit, and so we've had that conversation yesterday morning. But the FBI is in good shape as far as applicants and folks wanting to serve. The morale aspect of it, again, there may be some folks that feel like they want to move on, but there's also, I think, societal people look at it. They're not looking to find an organization that they're going to spend 30 years and walk out with a pension and won't watch. They're looking at where can I build on from one organization to the next. Because
could you repeat that?
Yeah, I didn't get the last part.
They're looking for.
They may be looking for opportunities to advance within different organizations, gather skills and knowledge here, represent, reputational credibility, and then move on. So we see a little bit of that, but for this office, single digits. Out of 700 plus agents, we've had a handful resign in the past couple of years. Some of that's family, some of that may be for taking other opportunity. A lot of that, quite honestly, is financial. They just can't afford to stay here. But we don't have people. There were no mass resignations based on any political event, whether it was when Director Comey announced the recommendation not to prosecute Hillary, whether that's his termination, or anything that's happened under Director Ray's administration. You've not seen a mass exodus. You've seen more questions from folks that want to know the why, and I think that's generational. It's folks that necessarily want to be involved and read affidavits when they may not have wanted to before. But we've not seen a deterioration in people feeling a sense of connection to the mission or believing in the job they've signed up for.
You know, it's interesting because I must have talked to the children of every one of my friends, including people in this room, about, their children, about their career things. Oh, I want to go into international affairs, and they think the only place you can go is the State Department. And that's certainly a great place to go. But what's astounding is that the United States government, and I say this to our members to sort of encourage them, every agency of the United States government is involved in things international, almost without exception. If you're in the agriculture, you name it, there are international. So, the sort of our hanging out together makes perfect sense, largely because everything is international. And one area in which, I believe we lead the rest of the world is in policing. I was talking to a friend, Carrie Gleischer. Yeah. So this guy was legal attaché in Tel Aviv, and he was telling me all twice. And he's still there. He retired. He went native. He retired to Israel. So I when we're talking about the Israelis and all their highly vaunted this, that, and the other thing, I said, so what are the Israelis not good at? He said, car theft. And he was telling me all of the sort of day-to-day, these weren't FBI concerns, but day-to-day things in which the United States was actually teaching the Israelis things that we're really, really good at. Why are we so good at it? The FBI, again, for, most of us, is like, this magical agency that does things, when cops are stuck, they always go to they hate it, and then they go to the FBI. And why? What makes the FBI so special, so good, so distinctive?
Well, I mean, one, we have a lot of latitude in what we do. So we build a lot of diverse expertise. But without a doubt, it's the people that we hire. So we get folks that leave great careers and successful, whether they've been in law enforcement or military or the private sector. Again, NASA engineers, medical doctors, they bring that to the FBI and then they problem solve together. I mean, law enforcement is a problem solving business by and large. But we're not confined to the organizational culture of one local jurisdiction or one area of the country. So we take the best practices from all over. We host things like the National Academy, in which 10% of those students are international. And we create an environment so they learn from each other, and then we pick off some of those best practices from agencies all over the world. Our legal attachés that are in 63 formal legal attachés, but then sub-offices all over, they work with partners around the world. And again, they're learning and incorporating doctrine. They're teaching partners, but they're also learning at the same time.
One final question. I'm going to throw it open to our members. We're a pretty hands-on group. The Council on Foreign Relations or RAND or, a lot of our SIBs, have huge staffs of researchers writing, doing policy analysis and learning tomes and so forth, which is important. But having worked at RAND and being a longtime member of the Council on Foreign Relations, I always felt that our mission in LA is different. Our mission is to get LA to realize how ridiculously cool it is as the most global city in the world. Who are the two most important people in Los Angeles? I always say Gene Soroka, you'll know who they are, but most people don't. Gene Soroka and Mario Cordero. Who are these guys? The head of the Port of Los Angeles and the head of the Port of Long Beach, for which they are the carotid artery of the United States. Two people that nobody knows. So we have a magic here, and our members are very hands-on. There's a lot of brain power in our membership and in this room. For example, during the, again I may be political, the shambolic exit from Afghanistan, a group of our members were really upset about Afghans being left behind. One of our members, a West Point grad, a former, career colonel in the Army, who now works for Dennis McDonough as an advisor on Veterans Affairs, created a TOC, a Tactical Operations Center in our office. They were there 24/7 until it was over, and they managed to get a bunch of people out of Afghanistan that they couldn't. What can our members do? How can we're all taxpayers, we're all citizens, we're all patriots. We want you to get it right. We want to get it right. Is there anything that, that the people in this room and our other members can do to help you, to assist you, to get to know the FBI a little bit better? I'm just looking around this world. We've got a law this room. We've got a law professor. We've got a former assistant secretary from Homeland Security, the head of the Islamic Center. I mean, these are, the head of the Orange County World Affairs Council is a former career military officer. I mean, there's a lot of, Matt Schumacher somewhere, a psychologist who worked with the special operations community for a decade. So, put us in the game, Coach. What can these people do to help you out?
So I think that the idea that, when we say all crises are local, I mean, bringing these type of teams together at a local level to solve large problems. Innovation is one of the pillars for the FBI, figuring out what is the biggest challenges we face as a nation. And it could be large, seemingly overwhelming issues like fentanyl. They could be issues that are, again, much more sensitive, but just as impactful, like how do we stop terrorism from coming to our communities, and at times terrorizing elements of society, right, just without even conducting an act. So communication is key, and that comes in many forms. We do have current participants from our Citizen Academy here, right? Ms. Dawn is going through this iteration now to understand who we are and what our interest in partnering with everybody. And how do we do that, right? That's through community groups, that's through formal organizations, and then that's through things like Citizens Academy and partnerships that you may have with law enforcement organizations that then tether into what we're doing every day.
Let me cheat a little bit and ask Dawn this is Dawn Hagigi, one of our longtime members. She's a lawyer. She's the chief, what do you call it? Chief General Counsel, the head lawyer for a large company in Los Angeles. What's the Citizens Academy? Why did you do it? And what are you getting out of it? Because I'm trying to do a little recruiting here, and you're a busy person. If you had time to do it, it means it's important. Because I don't know much about it either. So what can you tell us? Do you need a mic, or you may? We've got them. So not everybody is as loudmouthed as me. So there you go.
I was introduced to the Citizens Academy through a former retired agent, Jenna Monroe. Some of you may know her through Silence of the Lambs. Jodie Foster plays her. The Citizens Academy mission is to engage with the community and for us to understand what the FBI does. It is probably one of the best things, and I've done many things that I have participated in. What I see and what I hear and what the assistant director was saying this evening, with the agents, there is a sense of duty and a sense of mission that I have not witnessed before, a sense of camaraderie and individuals who are so dedicated to protecting the United States. What is core and what comes to me in each of the classes is that when an agent is speaking to us about an issue, for example, maybe a potential terrorist situation that they may want to disrupt, first and foremost, is it within the Constitution? Are we upholding the Constitution? And I hear that consistently in every single session and class that we have had. Is it within our protocols? Are we doing it right? A sense of integrity and a sense of dedication. And I know, join with my other Citizen Academy members, when I walk out, that you have a sense of pride that we have the best law enforcement agency in the country. And it's some of the things that we see, I was shocked to know maybe these are some of the things that are happening in the community and that our law enforcement disrupts it because we go around our daily lives not knowing exactly what's happening. And the hours that individuals put in and with their families, it's just really fascinating. I will tell you there's a teen academy. On Saturday, I'm speaking to 60 teenage girls who are underserved, and I have all the information to talk to them about the teen academy. There's an academy for college students. It's actually an internship. I have broadcast it out to a number of students in universities, and I would be happy to share any of that information with you, as well as just the recruitment. We've had the HR office come in to tell us about the different types of opportunities that are available at all different levels.
Wonderful, thank you so much. My guess is if you Google it, we could, I don't want to inundate Dawn with, but let us know and we'll try to find a way to get you some information. For an agency doing very sensitive work, to invite you in, you'd be crazy not to say, not to show up. That doesn't happen, a lot, including in City Hall. So, I mean, it's a good thing to do. Questions, please. Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering how you are able to keep colleges and universities safe, since it's so easy for anyone to just walk onto a college campus. When I go to a Trojan football game, I have to go through metal detectors and my purse gets looked into and all that. But when I go on campus at USC, there's really nothing. I mean, they do kind of ask you, like, maybe why you're here, or tell you where to park, but you could be anybody and say anything and easily get on campus. And same thing at Pepperdine, same thing at UCLA. Seems to me like universities would be a really soft target.
That, by the way, is a really important and good question. Several years ago, within a short period of time, I think 2 Chinese students, Chinese nationals, were murdered. They were SC students. And in China, this was interpreted as being simply more than, street crime, and it actually affected. So it's a really, particularly in a place like Los Angeles, it's a really important question because it's part of our international relations. So.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the challenge that we have, right, is that we are an open society by definition. You look at post 9/11, how close you could get to the White House. And reflecting back to days when you review the former presidents that people knocked on the door and came into the White House. So as we evolve in the safety versus access balance, the challenge there is about communication and partnership. So we closely partner, and we have USC as one of the partner organizations that brings their public safety element in, as well as UCLA and many of the other institutions, into our space for intelligence briefings, where we share what the threat streams and what we see that are ongoing. I don't have to tell you that it makes people nervous when FBI agents go on campus. So we then build those relationships to understand that we are not there monitoring student activity and looking at student organizations that may have contrary views about the U.S. government. When we do things like transnational repression investigations, and realizing that there are countries out there that do want to curb dissident views, and we'll seek out these students that oftentimes may be promoting anti-government messages in their home countries. So we have to navigate that very closely, where we don't have FBI agents on the campuses of any really major institution, except to communicate through the public safety elements, making sure that we are informing them. If there are special events, then we will help by building command posts that share real-time information and that are prepared to respond in the event of an incident. So every year we jointly partner with like the City of Pasadena on the Rose Bowl, but not necessarily based on the universities involved.
Imagine when the Olympics come.
Yeah.
I mean, the FBI will, every agency, that you've heard of and haven't heard of will be there. So you had a question, and then you had a question as well. Yes.
I'm going to ask a question that wasn't on my mind when I left my home.
Yeah.
But it rose to my mind while I was driving here. I have the Sirius radio. I jumped through different stations. I will let you know I'm more on the liberal side of things, but I listen every now and then to Fox News to
Yeah.
see what they're saying.
Yeah,
This
I
was
do
the
the same
Jesse
thing.
Waters program. He had went into a rant where he said there were 40 FBI agents who were FBI informants who were reporting on the quote-unquote Biden crime family, and that the FBI was not pursuing that. Then after that, he started interviewing an actual former agent who was verifying everything he said. And the reason I'm raising this is there is a great sense in this country of losing faith in institutions. And when a country loses faith in its basic institutions, it's lost.
Yeah.
One of the targets is the FBI. And you hear it from Republican candidates who want to eliminate the FBI. So my question is, and maybe this is not your focus, but what should the government and what should the FBI be doing? I'll call it to rehabilitate its reputation, but I don't think its reputation is at all smeared. But you've got attacks on it, and I truly worry when all our institutions come under attack, people lose faith in them, and I think it leaves the country in a very dangerous place.
Yeah. So for us, we focus on the facts. And you can go back through the history of time when there have been political groups that don't like our outcome. On both sides, right? It wasn't that long ago that we were blamed for Hillary not winning the election. And so we drive down kind of the center of where the law takes us, and there will be folks that won't like that outcome. Now, folks are free to speak from whatever rumor they've heard, and we've gone again through the test of time. There have been conspiracy theories and belief systems that I won't refute if we just don't even entertain those because we see them every political cycle. We see someone who believes that we've been on someone's side. They just can't say necessarily which side we're on.
Sure. I have two concerns. One is the open borders. I have 4 shelters in Tijuana, and I lead about 2,300 congregations here in the Southern California area. And my concern is all the people that are coming in and nobody knows who they are, and if they have a criminal record in their country. And 2 is how do we keep our houses of worship safe? Because we've had incidents like what we had in Orange County, where somebody went ballistic and started killing people in our congregations. And I know that we have private armed security guards in our congregations, but sometimes we have, congregations where there's 5,000 people inside a church.
Yeah. No, I mean, although the FBI doesn't directly get involved in border security per se, we do take information about potential individuals come into this country that potentially have national security threats. However, when we talk about how we protect houses of worship, that is like what we're doing today. We have those conversations with interfaith councils. I met yesterday with Sheriff Barnes from Orange County, who hosts local versions of what we often do nationally and identify how do we share information, right? A lot of really what we're talking about is how do we prevent an act from occurring, and that's being aware within the confines of what we're allowed to do. Again, we don't monitor religious activity, we don't monitor anything that's protected by the First Amendment, including protests in front of our own building. We don't monitor those, even if we're aware. So it's really about sharing information with state and local partners that are our first line of defense. And then building trust with them and the faith leaders that we need to be trusted partners. When they have an internal concern, we need to know that we're not there to target any one individual based on their religious affiliation. You've heard the recent criticism about the Bureau's, it's being coined, a targeting on Catholics. And realizing, right, that we will investigate a crime or a threat no matter where it exists. But we have very, very specific rules and operations, and realizing that that memo that's often cited was immediately rescinded, and it was published at the local level by first-line supervisors. But immediately rescinded is not meeting our standards, and it's now being held in permanency. This is an FBI standard. But we will follow threats anywhere they exist, but we have very, very specific rules about being involved in religious institutions. And that is obviously to instill confidence that we're not sending undercover folks in to monitor religious activity unless we meet certain criteria and obtain certain authorities. So that is on kind of how we build trust. Using that trust to communicate of what we need to know and then what we need to share.
Can you come to a prayer breakfast and say that?
We can, yes.
Is it, you know, that's.
Aren't hate crimes federal crimes though?
In addition to state crimes, most states have a hate crime statute. I can tell you, living in Mississippi did not have a hate crime statute, so we took many things federally that opted in other places.
That's interesting. Seth.
Thank you. So not to grind everything down to a legal question as quickly as falsely, but back to politics a little bit. One issue that I'm interested in your views on is, so at the end of the year, I think the authority under Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act Amendments Act of 2008 expires, which governs the warrantless intercepts of non-Americans overseas, which has potentially they're calling the United States. And so there's a controversy over the issue.
Yeah.
There's a controversy over whether Congress can actually get anything done, let alone this particular issue. What's your thought on the issue, and what would be the impact of the FBI's counterintelligence and counterterrorism mission if it were not to be renewed?
It's a crushing blow to our mutual safety. Now, there have been considerable reviews. Every system that we've ever implemented has had flaws and oversight, whether going back to my days of how we issued national security letters. Then at the field office level, and SACs were writing national security letters to banks and realizing we didn't have a good record to track that. What we found in those reviews, that was on that inspection, is that there was not a nefarious purpose. It was administrative. There was a lack of oversight, and it corrected. Same issues here. There have been flaws in the way we administer the 702 program administratively. What they've found is there's not been an abuse of that authority with any significant that I've ever heard. Now, when there's incidental collection on Americans, that's what people worry about, and we have a system in place to curtail that, and we're constantly refining it. My hope is that I think there's been conversations. I've spoken to members of Congress myself from our region who seem to think that the juice is worth the squeeze to get it renewed. In that, giving up that type of protection for society at large over the concerns of what might be oversight and administrative issues isn't worth walking
It would
away.
seem like, especially given the current situation going on in the Middle East right now.
That's right, because
bad time to do that.
we will be completely blind, and when you look at how much collection, not for us, the entire intelligence community uses that resource operated through us for their benefit.
Professor Wagner.
Yeah, just to step in for a second, as one of the authors of FISA in section 702. The proposed amendments, if they pass, are basically technically not workable. There's a real problem there. You don't have the evidence you need to get the kinds of warrants that they need. There's a problem. And he's right. It's just not going to work the way the amendment says practically. We're trying to get some of the committee staff to clean it up. It's not fine.
Carol.
So in preparation to serve as one of the legal observers at Guantanamo, I was reading a lot of stuff, and one of
Let
the
me
best...
interrupt. I just want to give a drop of context. The Pacific Council has observer status at Guantanamo Bay at the legal proceedings. It is restricted exclusively to our, it's like lawyers row here, to our members who are attorneys, and one civilian. Me, I got to go, but it's members who are lawyers.
So, and I hear, by the
Go
way...
ahead, Carol. Sorry to interrupt, but
I hear that actually, instead of staying in the tents where banana rats or whatever they call them
The
would
iguanas.
circulate.
They're that big.
Yeah, they now are staying in hotels or something, so time to go back. But in preparation, one of the materials, among the things I was reading, was a brilliant book, which was based on many of his pieces in the New Yorker by Lawrence Wright, The Looming Tower, The Road to 9/11. And actually there had been another book that I had previously read, The Search for, I forget the name of it, but anyway, fascinating description, and in Lawrence Wright's point of view, if you haven't read it, the FBI, may I say, got screwed. Because the CIA, it goes into the explanation of why and how this happened, that the CIA ended up taking over really the investigation, which I was influenced by Lawrence Wright's opinion that was a huge mistake because of the interviewing skills and training that the FBI has, which the CIA did not have. Moreover, they had a different objective than the CIA has. Than that the FBI has. So what I'm wondering is the havoc, frankly, that caused in our legal system with all of these defendants. If that has been rectified, and if so, where are we with that? Because really, it seems that the FBI should have been in the lead there, and if they had been, we would probably be able to have been able to more effectively prosecute many of these defendants who are still in Guantanamo.
I mean, you raised some points about our objectives are different. The CIA gleans intelligence to protect national security. That is not subject to review or cross-examination. FBI agents are preparing to convince people to cooperate when it's not in their best interest. And they do that through a whole system of rapport building and at times, even when it's not to elicit a confession, to understand the mindset of the individual being interrogated, which helps us in the context of understanding their organization and potentially avert future risk. So when we look at how FBI agents conduct interviews and interrogations, completely different framework in which we operate, and we're preparing to complete those interviews and interrogations and document those and be prepared to defend those in a court of law and stand behind those, right? So the things that we do, we want to make sure that match the integrity of the organization, and not to disparage anything that the CIA does, but it is just under different contexts and with a different outcome.
Dr. Denny.
Thank you. Tom, thanks very much for this great explanation of what's going on, and I feel safer that you are in the job, so a little bit anyway. You first started talking about the various functions of the LA office, and you mentioned counterintelligence. So you may have seen on 60 Minutes on Sunday night, they had the intelligence chiefs from the Five Eyes countries, the UK, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and the US. And they, for the first time, they came out and they said, China is our major threat, and it's all over, it's throughout our cities, they're doing all kinds of things. And I wonder, is a part of your office, is it a focus, perhaps a priority? And I don't want you to give away too much, but is it a priority focus perhaps for the LA office, Chinese efforts to spy on companies and all kinds of issues related to national security? Thank you.
So I was with Director last week and talking about the preparation for this. I think for maybe the first time in history, we are all on a consolidated effort to curb the CCP and their efforts, not the Chinese population. We know, especially growing up in Southern California, so much of this economy is thriving because of immigration from all over the world. So that sometimes can get lost in translation when we conduct some of these counterintelligence investigations. But without question, we know, because they publish if you look at the five, right, that the official status is that by certain years, the Chinese government plans on being in these positions. And how do they get there? Is it through innovation and development, or is it through adopting technology and infrastructure that exists in other countries? And it's not just us. It's anybody that has the ability to cut down the research and development time.
You know, one of the challenges, back to the question about universities, and the assistant director is saying the FBI is not ubiquitous on university campuses, but much of the problem, and I'm not talking about Confucius societies and that sorts of stuff, I'm talking about people working in labs. I had in a class I taught at SC, I had a Fulbright student from China who knew more about me and more about what I'm not important enough for this person to know as much as they knew about me. And in digging, it turned out that this person was a professor at a military university. She wasn't from Tsinghua, sort of the Harvard of China. She was a colonel from some military. So the FBI really, I shouldn't speak, but it is my impression that the FBI finds it challenging working on university campuses, but much of what we need to be concerned with is happening at university campuses, but at the same time we need to be mindful of civil rights, a major uptick in hate crimes, Asian hate crimes, and on and on and on. It's really, really complicated. And I don't envy you because a lot of what you need to do to do your work, that door is closed to you. And academics are, apologies to all of my friends in the professoriate, which I abandoned years ago, are not always particularly friendly to law enforcement, the government, and so forth, because the reality is professors really know better than everybody else.
Yeah, just breaking news, the 22 people were killed in Maine from a mass shooting. And I just wanted to ask you, my sense is that the FBI is concerned about crime prevention. Does it get involved in any kind of crime prevention when it comes to these kind of mass shootings? 56 people were injured. It's a lone gunman, supposedly, so I don't know if it involves counterterrorism or anything else like that. But in any case, is there anything that, at what point do you get involved in trying to prevent these kinds of things from happening? And is there a sense that law enforcement would be for gun control because it would make their jobs a lot easier, or is that something you guys, not officially, of course you can't say anything about it, just personally?
So I'll go back to the original question about our involvement. So we are deeply involved in the prevention of acts, again, with our limitations on what we're allowed to investigate. I'll give an example of the recent hate crimes prosecution that we're pursuing on the individual that shot two Orthodox Jewish men leaving the synagogue. There was a large body of hate speech that he was publicizing, and students in his dental program at UCLA knew it and distanced themselves. He was eventually removed from the program and continued to write and pontificate about violence against Jewish people. Until these two shootings, right, we really couldn't put the two and two together. But we get involved in much of that activity, and we share that with partners, because our ability then to give that to the local jurisdiction where we believe someone resides allows them to often interdict, either using state laws or somebody that may be on their radar for other purposes. When we also look at kind of the motivation behind much of this, and we do extensive studies, and we look at the psychology and the motivation, the means to acquire weapons and other types of dangerous items, and we share that with our partners, and then for their sharing with community members or public safety officials as they deem fit. So we get involved in both of those. It would be, I can't really speculate on the different law enforcement organizations are at odds about weapons control and firearms restrictions. So we don't really have a good solution on what that means, because what we find is in the places with the most restrictive gun laws are often where some of the most violent crimes are occurring, right? So I can't answer the why behind that, but we know that we just have to continue to focus on what we can do in terms of prevention and response.
I think our time is up, but Donald, I want to give you, sir, the last word. If there's anything, any parting words, I hope, since you're going to spend the rest of your life in Los Angeles, we know, hint, you know, I can point out everybody here who's worked in Washington who we have lured back.
That's right.
So we want you to join that distinguished club. But any final words you'd like to share with us?
Yeah.
We'll be grateful.
I mean, we as the FBI, I mean, we're part of this community, and our families and our kids are in schools and working in these communities. So we have personal vested interest, but we also need to have built communication nodes and trust to bring us in where possible and talk about the issues that you see and the problems that are important to you. And we could do that through a variety of means, but I think just having open dialogue, being comfortable communicating. You know, a recent survey that our Office of Public Affairs developed, and we have not released this publicly, we may never, but a high percentage of folks, I mean, the overall satisfaction of the FBI is still relatively high, significantly higher than Congress. So,
It doesn't say much.
But we got to take the wins when you can get them. But when asked about what do people want to know about the FBI, the big question was, I want to know how to report something to the FBI. That was shocking to us to think we have all these mechanisms to communicate. We have 800 numbers, you know, call FBI. We have tip lines. We have email. You know, realizing we're not doing a good enough job. If that's what people think, then we're not done refining our processes. So we need to hear from folks on the good, bad, the hard questions, the challenges, but also the tips and leads and recommendations. So we are open for business as far as how to make this FBI that belongs to all of you and all of your families better.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.